Hi, good afternoon to all. It is indeed my pleasure to be here with you on this wonderful occasion. It is really remarkable what we can do when we actually do things together. So let me first start by greeting the Honorable, His Excellency, Mr. Peter Cavendish, Ambassador of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Mark Edgell, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries, Ms. Vashti Gayadeen, CEO of TTCSI, Mr. Deodat Maharaj, Executive Director of Caribbean Export Development Agency, Ms. Alison Francis, Services Specialist of CEDA. Greetings to everyone. I want to congratulate the combined venture between Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industry, the Caribbean Export Development Agency, and the European Union in the provision of training for Trinidadian and CARICOM service providers to improve the export plan of their services. This is CSME in action. Also, let me congratulate you on opening up the annual Caribbean Lawrence Placide Service Go Global Award to 2 Caribbean enterprises. I want to be able to congratulate you on doing so well. I understand that you successfully completed the Services Go Global training program. Now, this award is an exciting and timely opportunity to the winners to build on their competencies as service exporters and to position themselves to expand the businesses they have during this COVID-19 pandemic. This award can therefore assist the service business to create jobs for Caribbean citizens and contribute positive economic growth for our countries. This will allow our economies to recover from the pandemic. The expansion of this reward is a true display of regional camaraderie among Caribbean islands. And again, I cannot stress enough how much we have needed more CSME togetherness in action. So thank you for giving me the chance to address you here this evening. Now, unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has limited our interactions and hence physical gatherings, which was once something taken for granted. Now we have to do it virtually. Part of our routine over the years has now been replaced by the virtual space, and our businesses and their offerings must, however, move forward using this space as much as possible, irrespective of coronavirus. In other words, we have to learn to live with it. The services sector has become one of the most important economic activity drivers in our regional economies. The services sector in the Caribbean is crucial for providing strong economic growth and creating a source of jobs for Caribbean nationals. The statistics illustrate that the services sector contributes a range of 43 to 86% of the gross domestic product among Caribbean economies. Our countries are therefore fully dependent on this service activity. This is clearly seen by our dependence on tourism and tourism-related services. According to the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, in 2019, tourism services accounted for approximately 13.9% of the Caribbean's gross domestic product and 15.2% of the total employment. These statistics rank the Caribbean as having the highest dependency ratio on tourism services because they represent the highest contribution to GDP in the world. There will therefore be very little surprise when I tell you that our country suffered the worst GDP decline of the order of 20% compared with non-tourism dependent economies whose shrinkage was between 8 and 12. This is because the tourism industry was one of the worst affected services sectors during the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries across the world closed their borders to curb the spread of the virus. And this, along with the suspension of cruise operators, led to a steep decline in tourist arrivals for the Caribbean. For Barbados, our statistics from the central bank revealed that for January until September 2020, Barbados experienced a 90% fall in long-stay visitors. Additionally, Barbados hotel occupancy rates dropped to almost half the occupancy rate in 2019. This fall off in the tourism industry had a significantly negative impact on the economic growth of our country. Barbados economic activity contracted by as much as 18% for the year 2020. The drop in tourism activity in the Caribbean contributed to the fall in economic activity in the following sectors: manufacturing, transport, retail, food distribution, and real estate for the year 2020. The fall in tourism activity then led to significant increases in unemployment rates across the region, ranging from 13% to above 30% in 2020. And when we use these statistics, let us remember that these are families who are struggling to put food on the table and to keep the roof over their head, and who are seeing their dreams melting in the sun. The financial services sector is the second largest contributor to the GDP in the Caribbean. So sadly, the financial services sector was the next major services sector affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Caribbean Development Bank reported that the Cayman Islands and the Virgin Islands reported lower revenue inflows from their financial services sector. In 2020, this widened the primary fiscal deficit, which averaged 5% in comparison to 0.9% in 2019. Essentially, the service industry in the Caribbean region was completely decimated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic also had a crippling effect on our public finances. And as we know, these finances were already weakened before the pandemic. Our governments had to utilize additional financial and medical resources to fortify the resilience of our health systems, stimulate economic activity, and provide social protection to the most vulnerable persons in the region. The COVID-19 pandemic meant that the regional governments had then to use their revenue and borrow funds to be able to source vaccines and other medical resources instead of paying off their debt. So we're more indebted today. It must be noted, though, that the services industry in the Caribbean was not only affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The services industry was also affected by the negative impact of blacklisting from the European Union and the recent implementation of a 15% corporate tax rate across the world. In December 2017, the EU published a list of countries which they believe did not do enough to curb international tax evasion and tackle unfair tax practices. The EU's blacklist consisted of small economies like those in the Caribbean, which are mostly known for attracting offshore business, international business, and foreign direct investment. In 2020, more CARICOM member states were added to the blacklist of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions, and they were identified as being insufficient in the area of anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism. The CARICOM member states affected by the revision of the blacklist included the US Virgin Islands, it included Cayman Islands, and Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, this blacklisting has significantly impacted countries across the Caribbean. What it did was it made our countries less attractive due to our presence on the blacklist. International businesses will therefore think long and carefully before they set up in our jurisdiction. So our services industry is being put under more pressure by the recent announcement now of a global minimum corporate tax of 15%. And unfortunately, this agreement will further squeeze the Caribbean as it struggles to limit its debt burden. This means that with 15% global tax rate, larger multinational corporations will be limited in their desire to seek the Caribbean for our low tax attributes. So the combination of these two things have signaled an urgent need to diversify the Caribbean services sector. The impact on tourism, the impact on financial services. There's an urgent need to diversify. That's why what you're doing today is so important. It is important to note that I'm not saying that we have to completely neglect tourism or the financial services sector. I'm, however, a firm believer that there is more untapped potential for the services sector to generate more economic growth for our region's economies, and your presence and your functioning every day is testimony to that fact. I strongly believe that the regional governments and the private sector must work together to diversify the services sector into areas such as information and communications technology, education, culture, health and wellness services. So you can imagine my joy in hearing the executive director for CEDA outlining areas in which they're going to give support for services. So we eagerly look forward to that. This diversification into other service areas will decrease Caribbean's dependence on financial and tourism-related services for economic growth. Moreover, the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly illustrated that the days of relying on just one sector for growth are going, or they have already gone. We in the region must therefore come together and find additional areas of economic growth through services. So as a result, our regional service strategy group comes to mind that is being moved forward by the CARICOM Secretariat, and of which many of you sitting here will become a part. I see this strategy as urging Barbados and the wider Caribbean to diversify the sectors in the following areas: that we pursue health and wellness, professional services, renewable energy services, ICT services, education, culture, creative industries, and financial services. Before the implementation of these services, the strategy group would examine the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats to these service sectors. And no doubt you covered some of that in your program. The decimation of the tourism and tourism-related services sector highlighted the need for a more resilient and robust services sector in the Caribbean. Services innovation then is going to be crucial in creating resilient, robust, and competitive services in the region. This services innovation can be achieved through increasing the use of ITC services to be able to reach a global audience. The use of the virtual space is ideal to showcase our cultural arts, the delivery of consulting services or educational services to a broader global audience. However, a resilient services sector must surpass more than just the increased use of ICT. As the Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD, Isabel Durant, stated during the recently concluded UNCTAD conference, to build resilience, countries in the Caribbean need to further diversify and upgrade their economy. This requires coherent and supportive policies and regulations such as trade policies to reach foreign markets and benefit from foreign inputs, industrial policies to address structural gaps and support diversification and upgrading strategies, and the use of a holistic government approach and coordination with civil society and critically the private sector, including our business and professional associations. So in closing, the regional governments cannot diversify the services sector alone. The regional governments and private sector must work together to build out other services sectors to support the Caribbean economies when the activity in the tourism sector is so minuscule. We must include the Caribbean consumer in our initiatives as well, to help to broaden and educate their tastes so that they begin to support our regional goods and services. Getting some consumers on board to recognize that their deliberate and rational decision to support their economies, jobs, and social services will add to our success. Wooing global consumers, both near and far, with the excellence of our service and the value proposition which we bring, is then the ultimate. It now only remains for me to wish for you to enjoy the remainder of the Services Go Global ceremony and to sincerely congratulate the certificate awardees who have succeeded in this program. I salute you. And to the coordinators of this Go Global program, I want to salute your vision, your energy, and your commitment, because it is through this that this was made possible. I wish you every success in your export endeavors.